On Sunday, when Caiaphas, the high priest, got word of the resurrection, he quickly began to hatch a plan and hand out some bribes to spread the news that Jesus' body had been stolen from the tomb while the guards were sleeping. Ironically, by doing so, he proved for all of history that the tomb was empty and Jesus had risen.
After this, Jesus made no less than 12 post-resurrection appearances, 4 of them on Resurrection Sunday itself.
And one of them happened right here, 180 kilometers from Jerusalem by the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah, Peter and the gang had lived through the last grueling week of Jesus' life, including the death and resurrection. And then afterwards, when things started to settle down, they didn't know what to do next.
So they drifted back here to the shores of this sea where it all began.
You know, I can just imagine. I mean, Peter walking around here wondering, okay, do I go back to fishing? I mean, it had been 3 years earlier that Jesus had walked up to them. They were throwing their nets in the sea, and Jesus had said those famous words, "Leave all of this, come follow me, and I will make you fishers of men." And now he's back here, and I can just imagine what's going through his mind.
I can imagine him thinking, what was all of that? The last 3 years have been the most stretching, the most challenging, the most incredible years of my life. I mean, walking with Jesus, hearing his profound teaching, seeing miracle after miracle. But now look at us. We're right back here where we started. And I have to wonder if he was thinking that, I wonder if it was all my fault that we're back here. I mean, I'm the one with the big loud mouth. I'm the one who was so full of pride that I said, "Oh, Jesus, I'll never deny you. Jesus, I'll always stick with you." And then on that last night, I was the one who denied him, denied even knowing him, not once, but 3 times.
We read what happened next in John chapter 21. It says that several of the disciples were on the shore, and Simon Peter said, "I'm going fishing." "We'll come too," they said. So they all went out in a boat, but they caught nothing all night. At dawn, Jesus was standing at the beach, but the disciples couldn't see who it was. He called, "Fellows, have you caught any fish?" "No," they replied. And then he said, "Throw out your net on the right side of the boat, and you'll get some." So they did, and they couldn't haul in the net because there were so many fish in it. Then the disciple Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his tunic, for he had stripped for work, jumped into the water, and headed for shore. The others stayed with the boat and pulled the loaded net to the shore, for they were only about 100 yards from shore. When they got there, they found breakfast waiting for them, fish cooking over a charcoal fire, and some bread.
I think it's so cool that Jesus, the resurrected Jesus, was on this very shore making breakfast for his friends. And what happens next is something so beautiful and profound. After breakfast was over, Jesus goes to Peter and he says, "Peter, do you love me? Do you love me more than these? Do you love me more than your boat, more than all these fish, more than your career, more than the comfort of your hometown?" And I wonder if Peter paused for just a moment, knowing of his impetuous tendencies to answer so quickly. And maybe he looks down at the fire and then says, "Yes, Jesus, I do love you."
Yeah, and then Jesus asked him a second time, "Peter, do you love me?" And maybe with a little bit more confidence and slightly lifting his head, Peter says, "Yes, Lord, I love you." And then Jesus says, "Okay, I want you to be the one who feeds my sheep."
And a third time, Jesus asks him, "Peter, do you love me?" And Peter now gets upset with this, Jesus asking him the same question 3 times. But isn't it interesting that Peter denies Jesus 3 times, and now Jesus is asking him the same question 3 times? It's like Jesus is giving Peter an opportunity to forget about the denial that took place, and now instead to give this opportunity for a very powerful declaration that he did love Jesus.
Yeah, I think, for Peter, he must have sat there for a moment and realized, oh my goodness, Jesus doesn't want me wallowing in my guilt and failure. He wants to move me far past that. I think this is the moment where Jesus was saying, Peter, I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you far beyond your failure and mistakes. And I love that for our lives, because if you're sitting there with any sort of sense of failure or mistake, you need to know that God just wants you to declare your love for Him, and He will move you past that failure and those mistakes. And then He will put a purpose in your soul. And in fact, we read about this in Matthew chapter 28.
I have been given all authority in heaven and on earth. Therefore go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all the commands I've given you, and be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age.